Our next speaker is a strong friend of the IAFF through our union's alliance with over a dozen firefighting unions across the globe. Peter Marshall began his career as a firefighter with the Metropolitan Fire Brigade in 1984. Peter was appointed to research and development in 1991. In June 1995, Peter was elected full-time secretary of the United Firefighters Union of Australia, Victorian branch. In 2002, Peter was elected National Secretary of the United Firefighters Union of Australia. Peter continues to hold both roles. Peter has been a driving force in promoting firefighter health and safety, advancing workplace conditions, enhancing gender equality and diversity, and raising awareness about climate change. In June 2019, Australia became the first country outside of North America with presumptive legislation for occupational cancer coast to coast. Please welcome Secretary Peter Marshall.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, can I thank the General President Shayberger, General Secretary Treasurer Edzo Kelly, and also the Executive Board. What I'd like to try and do is take you on a journey that Australia's been on that essentially has come from the IAFF. Certainly I'll give you a little bit of history about who we are. It's about presumption reform and certainly about where we are today, and it's only because of the IAFF that we're there. So first of all, a little bit about my country, or our country. 24.6 million people approximately. Interesting unionised figures there. For the public sector, we've got 13%, and for the private sector, we've got 13%, and for the public sector, we've got 38%. It is a challenge to continue unionism against a conservative agenda that drives down and makes it harder each time for unions to achieve outcomes for their members. Our parliamentary system, where we needed to get the legislative reform necessary to get cancer presumptive rights for firefighters, is very similar to North America, in particular the Canadian system. We have 150 members of parliament in the House of Representatives, and then we have 76 senators. For us to be able to make law, we had to get all of those people on board, in particular the Senate. And I want to take you to a report from the Senate later on. Unlike North America, it's a compulsory voting system. Everyone has to vote in Australia, and it's a bicameral system. So the U of A, we're only a very new organisation, so we were registered federally in 1990. Our national president is Greg McConville, and I've been National Secretary for 2002. There's a number of our board members here from various branches, and I acknowledge their presence and their support. We have 8 branches, and there's a very high density of membership in those branches. Most importantly, we have been able to achieve legislative reform beyond our wildest dreams. In 2006, 2007, there was a vision that was held by the IAFF, in particular, whether we could actually have shared views and shared informations, and a global alliance was formed. That global alliance was headed up by Harold Shayberger, as General Secretary. I was the chair of that global alliance, and Matt Rack from the FBU was the vice chair. So what we wanted to do is actually learn about how you achieve presumptive rights, protection for cancer for firefighters in North America, in particular in the Canadian model, and how we could actually replicate that. The challenges for us were significant. 8 separate workers' compensation systems. The union had no understanding of firefighter political capital. We learned that from the IAFF. And employers argued that the North American circumstances did not apply to Australian firefighters. So we sought assistance from our IAFF partners, and we actually were able to achieve assistance in the form of advice, campaign advice, studies that underpinned the incidence of cancer in occupational cancer in firefighters. We looked at campaigning, and we also were provided with dedicated professional witnesses who were able to front our parliamentary inquiries to ensure that all the myths were put to rest. We adopted the IASS campaigning program of non-partisan approach. We actually engaged all politicians, which is a bit different for Australia. Normally we do have a partisan relationship with the Labor politicians and no relationship with the Conservative politicians. This time we adopted a non-partisan approach. We developed a legislative conference, learnt from the IASS, and we actually lobbied and traversed Parliament and met each and every one of those politicians so they understood our needs. We looked at media and education and public support, utilising members who were cancer survivors so they could tell their story. We engaged the families of deceased members so as that they could tell their stories in these inquiries as well. We mobilised Firefighters' political capital. We didn't even know what that was prior to 2006, 2007. And it's so important that we keep that political capital. So the arguments were put against us were that North American building materials instructions are different to Australia. Firefighting ensemble was different to the ensemble that we use in Australia. That North American tactics were different. There were no studies of significance in Australia in relation to occupational cancer, even though the Lemaster's meta-analysis actually had 2 Australian studies in it. We requested assistance from our global partners, and in particular the IASS, and we were given expert evidence from Alex Forrest from Everton, the Winnipeg president and a trustee on the IASS board, and we also were given the assistance from Chief Fire Officer Ken Block from Edmonton. We could not get one Chief Fire Officer in Australia to front the parliamentary inquiry to advocate for laws protecting firefighters. We were only able to get a Chief Firefighter and then a Chief Firefighter through the IASS. We could not get the technical expertise to be able to advocate before the Senate inquiry about the science behind underpinning the need for presumption legislation. But the IASS gave us that. They actually said the construction materials used over in North America were different. So therefore the toxins, the exposures, the carcinogens were different. We were able to disperse that argument with again with information given to us by the IASS. We were able to illustrate that the uniforms may be different in construction in type, but in reality they have the same problem. The unavoidable risk that they breathe. And if they breathe, firefighters are actually exposed when they go into those buildings to fight fires and save lives. Provided tactics to us in relation to engaging the politicians, Fire Ops 101. We were able to produce study after study in the Senate inquiry. Alex and Ken gave evidence on many occasions. They traversed from state to territory in our country and gave evidence before parliamentary inquiries and argued with the best, argued with the advocates against legislation to protect firefighters. If I have a look at later on, there's actually a book out the front of the IASS OHS booth there. That's the Senate inquiry booth. And I might skip over this a little bit because of the time constraints, but get a copy of that book. Enshrined in the highest levels of Australian parliamentary law is passages that talk about the values of firefighters and the sacrifices they make in protecting the community. Enshrined forever as a result of this campaign that essentially eventuated and began from the assistance of the IASS. They're the cancers that we actually ended up getting covered. So primary site brain cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, leukemia, breast cancer, testicular cancer, myeloma, prostate cancer, ureter cancer, colorectal cancer, and esophageal cancer, all with the latent periods. When we first went to that Senate inquiry, the union only asked for 5 cancers. After hearing the evidence from the IAFF experts, Alex Forrest and Ken Blocks, and provided with the study after study that showed the incidence of cancers, the Senate inquiry itself made a recommendation to include all those cancers in the legislation. The campaign, the education was so overwhelming that they were unanimously adopted by the Australian Senate. So here we are again from our global partners, from Mr. Schayberger. We were able to use what you have developed so effectively, and that's Fire Ops 101. And you see in a picture here of a senator, Gavin Marshall, no relation, actually performing hot fire training. And here we have a Green senator, Penny Wright, again coming out of hot fire training, Fire Ops 101, experiencing, smelling, feeling what it is like to be involved fighting a fire. And they got it. They understood it. It was no longer just reduced to paper. It was an experience that actually tipped the balance in our favour. Key recommendations: that the bill be expanded to include multiple myeloma, primary site lung cancer in non-smokers, primary site prostate, ureter colorectal and esophageal cancers. And the most important one from this Senate, and this is a bipartisan Senate with Conservative politicians, Labor politicians, Independents and Greens, unanimously said that this bill must be passed. And it's enshrined forever in the transcript, the Parliamentary Scribe of Australia, the sacrifices that firefighters make, not just here, but around the globe. It goes on to say other things there, and I'm looking at the time, so I might just skip over that. What it does say in that report, which I will read out to you, study after study has pointed to a higher risk of cancer for firefighters than the general population. This is in the highest level of the Parliament of Australia. And that document now is being used by firefighters over the European Union as a result of the campaign that began with the assistance of the IAFF to convince their lawmakers that they should have presumptive rights as well. And then this is also so important. It is a moral duty of the community to establish them to seek compensation should they fall ill as a consequences. It talks about the work they do. And it talks about foregoing quantity and quality of life in protecting the community. This is not the union running a PR campaign anymore. This is the highest level of the Australian Parliament acknowledging the sacrifice and work that firefighters do. And all because of the people in this room. So let me give you a little bit of an overview. 7 months of intensive campaigning, 43 trips in Canberra, 8 states, 220 politicians. I'm not a real good communicator, but I smiled at every one of those people when I met them. Engaging with global partners, 80 firefighters in the gallery every time there was a speech on the bill to make sure they understood that they're who they were actually advocating the legislation for. 95,000 letters, campaigns included, websites, social media, all learnt from the IAFF, and assistance was given to us freely. And I'm saying this for a reason. Australian firefighters will be and are forever grateful of the IAFF assistance, in particular the work that Alex and Ken did with under the guidance of Harold Schayberger. And as you can see, there they are, giving evidence in some of these inquiries. And I'll just take you through the passage of the bill. 4th of June 2011, the legislation was introduced. 8th of August to the 2nd of September, we had the Senate inquiry, including the hot fire training. 15th of September, the Senate report was tabled, and it's a historic document that encapsulates the work that we do and the sacrifices that we make. Legislation was passed in the House of Representatives on 13th of October. 24th, legislation passed in the Senate. The law was made and proclaimed on the 6th of December. That's okay, our work did not stop there. We then had another 8 jurisdictions to flow that out under. So we actually used the same principles, same campaign material, and I'll show you that journey because I've got about a 1.20 minutes. No, 1 minute 20. If the bill is passed, the Senate said, the committee encourages state jurisdictions to engage in a dialogue which will eventually see a positive and fair outcome for firefighters across Australia. So not only did we get federal protection for federal firefighters, the Senate said, now go ahead, go forth, and actually proclaim the same legislation in the states and territories based on that model of which we did. And if you can have a look at this, you'll see Tasmania was the next in 2013. And then you will see that in Western Australia again, 2013. And then you'll see in South Australia, 2013. Northern Territory, 2015. Queensland, 2015. New South Wales, 2018. And my state, our state, from a lot of our reps here, were the last after well over a 10-year battle. And in June this year, 2019. Now that's the end of my presentation, but it does not do justice to what your union, your General President, General Secretary Treasurer, Alex Forrest, Ken Block, the assistant that was provided for us, has made us as a union in Australia be able to protect our members who succumb to occupational cancer. Thank you for that. Thank you.